The great chamber of the Galactic Council stretched out like a crystal cathedral, its walls glowing with soft blue light that made everything feel cold and distant. Ambassador Lisa Carter stood at the small human podium, her hands gripped tight behind her back as she watched the alien representatives discuss her people like they were children who had broken something valuable. High Counselor Vexthara raised his 6 arms in the traditional gesture of dismissal, his purple skin gleaming under the chamber lights. The tall alien had been speaking for nearly an hour about why humans could not be trusted with independent colonial rights, using the same tired arguments that Lisa had heard for the past 20 years of her diplomatic career. The species from the third planet of Sol System demonstrates concerning patterns of aggression and unpredictability, Vexthara announced, his voice echoing through the vast space. Their request to establish colonies beyond their designated sectors shows dangerous ambition that threatens galactic stability. Lisa felt her jaw muscles tighten. Behind her in the human delegation section, she could sense Captain Jake Sullivan shifting in his seat. The military officer had warned her before this meeting that the Council would reject their proposal again, just like they had rejected every human request for expansion in the past 50 years. Dr. Helen Brooks leaned forward. In her chair, her scientific mind probably analyzing every word the alien spoke. She had been Earth's chief xenobiologist for 15 years and had spent most of that time watching the Council dismiss human scientific achievements as primitive or dangerous. The alien species seemed to think that humans were too young and too violent to be trusted with real responsibility in galactic affairs. The Metherian representative, a creature that looked like a walking tree with silver bark, spoke up next. We must also consider the recent incident in the Vega sector, where human traders used unauthorized weapon modifications in their cargo vessels. This clearly shows their disregard for established protocols. Lisa almost laughed at the accusation. The incident had been humans defending themselves against pirates that the Council's own security forces had failed to stop. But when humans fought back successfully, it was called aggression. When they followed Council rules and died, it was called learning experience. Captain Sullivan stood up slowly, his Earth Defense Force uniform looking simple and practical compared to the elaborate robes and ceremonial armor worn by the alien representatives. "If I may address the Council," he said, his voice calm and respectful despite the anger Lisa knew he was feeling. Vexthara waved one of his hands dismissively. "The military representative may speak, but briefly. We have already heard enough human justifications. The traders in the Vega sector were protecting families and medical supplies," Sullivan said. "The pirates had already destroyed 2 civilian transports before our people arrived. Would the Council prefer that humans stand by and watch innocent beings die?" A sound like grinding metal came from the Korthic delegation, which Lisa recognized as their version of laughter. The insect-like aliens found human concepts of mercy and protection amusing, viewing them as signs of weakness rather than strength. "This emotional response proves our point," declared the Korthic speaker, its mandibles clicking as it spoke. "Humans cannot separate logic from feeling. They act on impulse rather than following proper procedures. This makes them unsuitable for independent operations." Dr. Brooks stood up this time, her face flushed with frustration. "Every scientific breakthrough we have shared with this Council has been dismissed or claimed by elder species. Our medical discoveries have saved millions of lives across dozens of worlds, but we are still treated like dangerous children who cannot be trusted with basic freedoms." The chamber fell silent for a moment. Lisa could feel the weight of hundreds of alien eyes watching the human delegation. Most of the Council members looked bored or annoyed, as if they were listening to complaints from particularly troublesome pets. Vexthara's 6 eyes focused on the human group with what Lisa had learned to recognize as condescending patience. Dr. Brooks raises an interesting point about scientific contributions. However, the Council has determined that human innovations often lack proper safety considerations. Your species tends to rush toward results without considering long-term consequences. Like the quantum drive technology you claimed was too dangerous for us to develop, Lisa said, her voice carrying across the chamber. The same technology that 3 council species are now using in their latest ship designs, with modifications that make them less efficient than our original plans. A ripple of uncomfortable shifting went through some of the alien delegations. The quantum drive issue was a sore point that had been quietly discussed in diplomatic circles for years. Humans had developed the technology but been forbidden from implementing it, only to watch the Council reverse engineer and distribute inferior versions to their favored species. The Altarian representative, a being of pure energy contained in a crystalline shell, spoke with a voice like singing wind. The discussion of specific technologies is not relevant to the current proposal. The question before us is whether humans can be trusted with expanded colonial rights, not whether past decisions were optimal. Lisa felt something cold settle in her stomach. She had seen this pattern before in dozens of council meetings. The aliens would debate human requests with the appearance of fairness, but the decision had already been made. The discussion was just theater to make the rejection seem reasonable. Vextara raised his arms again, calling for silence. The Council has reviewed the human proposal for independent colonial expansion. We have considered their arguments and their past behavior. After careful deliberation, we have reached a decision. The chamber became perfectly quiet. Lisa could hear her own heartbeat in the silence. The proposal is rejected, Vextara announced. Furthermore, the Council has determined that additional oversight of human activities is necessary to prevent future incidents. New protocols will be implemented to ensure proper guidance of human development. Lisa felt the words hit her like physical blows. Additional oversight meant more restrictions, more limitations, more treatment of humanity as a species that could not be trusted to make its own decisions. But then Vextara continued speaking, and Lisa realized that something much worse was coming. These new protocols will include mandatory genetic modifications to reduce human aggression and unpredictability, the High Counselor announced. Human travel will be restricted to designated sectors under Council supervision. All human research and development will require pre-approval from appropriate Council authorities. The words hung in the air like poison. Lisa could hear Captain Sullivan's sharp intake of breath behind her. Dr. Brooks made a sound that might have been a sob or a curse. Genetic modifications. They wanted to change what humans were, to make them more compliant and less troublesome. They wanted to turn humanity into a client species, dependent and controlled. Lisa looked around the chamber at the alien faces, most of them showing satisfaction or indifference. A few seemed uncomfortable with the decision, but none spoke up in protest. This was how galactic civilization worked, she realized. The strong decided what the weak would become. She reached up and touched the small golden pin on her collar, the symbol of her position as Earth's ambassador to the Galactic Council. For 20 years, she had worn it with pride, believing that she was helping to build a better future for humanity among the stars. Now she understood that it was really a collar, marking her as a representative of a species that would never be allowed to truly join galactic civilization as equals. Lisa walked slowly to the central podium, her footsteps echoing in the silent chamber. Every alien eye watched her approach. She could feel their expectation that she would bow her head and accept the Council's decision, as human representatives had done so many times before. Instead, she reached up and unpinned the golden ambassador's badge from her collar. The small piece of metal felt heavier than it should have as she held it in her palm. The United Earth Federation hereby withdraws from the Galactic Council. Effective immediately, Lisa announced, her voice carrying clearly through the chamber. We will no longer subject ourselves to your oversight or accept your restrictions on our development. She placed the badge on the podium with a small metallic sound that seemed to echo forever in the stunned silence. Humanity chooses freedom over security, growth over comfort, and independence over acceptance, Lisa continued. We thank the Council for the lessons you have taught us about the true nature of galactic politics. Alarms began to wail throughout the station as Lisa turned and walked back toward her delegation. Captain Sullivan and Dr. Brooks fell into step beside her, their faces showing the same mixture of fear and determination that Lisa felt in her own heart. Behind them, The chamber erupted into chaos as alien representatives began shouting questions and demands, but Lisa did not look back. She had made her choice, and she knew that humanity would have to live with the consequences. The age of human cooperation with the Galactic Council was over. The command center on Luna Base buzzed with activity as Admiral Ryan Foster watched dozens of screens showing human ships across the galaxy. Each green dot represented a colony, research station, or military outpost that was now following Operation Starbreak protocols. The plan they had hoped never to use was finally in motion. All stations report ready for Phase 2, announced Lieutenant Commander Sarah Blake from her position at the communications console. Her fingers moved quickly across the holographic displays as she coordinated with human facilities scattered across hundreds of star systems. Admiral Foster nodded grimly. They had been preparing for this day for 30 years, ever since the Council had first shown signs of wanting to restrict human expansion. Every human colony had been built with hidden capabilities, every research station had secret defensive systems, and every cargo ship carried more than just trade goods. "Begin the exodus," Foster ordered. "All civilian transports are to proceed to rally points. Military escorts will provide cover." Across the galaxy, the largest movement of people and ships in galactic history began. On New Tokyo Station in the Centauri system, thousands of human families packed their belongings and boarded transport vessels. The children asked their parents why they had to leave so suddenly, and the adults gave simple answers about going home to Earth's protection. Captain Amy Price stood on the bridge of her destroyer, the EFS Defiant, as her small flotilla escorted a convoy of civilian ships toward the Kepler system rally point. Through the view screen, she could see the massive cargo vessels filled with families, scientists, and engineers who were leaving behind the only homes many of them had ever known. "Captain, we have incoming ships on long-range sensors," reported her tactical officer, Lieutenant Dan Murphy. "Configuration matches Hegemony Navy battle group approaching fast." Price felt her stomach tighten. The Hegemony was the Council's military arm, made up of ships from a dozen different species. Their commander, Fleet Admiral Korath, was known for his brutal efficiency in dealing with what the Council called rebellious elements. "How many ships?" Price asked, keeping her voice steady for the benefit of her crew. 12 heavy cruisers, 6 battleships, and at least 20 escort vessels, Murphy replied. "They outnumber us 5 to 1, Captain." Price looked at the convoy of civilian ships under her protection. Thousands of human families were depending on her small group of destroyers to keep them safe. The smart tactical decision would be to run, to scatter and hope that most of the civilians could escape while the military ships delayed the enemy, but Amy Price had not spent 15 years in the Earth Defense Force to abandon civilians when they needed her most. "Signal all ships," she ordered. "We hold this position. Civilian vessels are to continue to the rally point at maximum speed. We buy them the time they need." Her communications officer, Ensign Lisa Wong, looked uncertain. "Captain, shouldn't we request instructions from Fleet Command?" Price smiled, though it felt cold on her face. "Admiral Foster gave us our instructions months ago. Protect our people at all costs. That's exactly what we're going to do." The Hegemony battle group dropped out of hyperspace in a perfect formation that showed their confidence in dealing with what they saw as primitive human vessels. Admiral Korath's flagship, a massive dreadnought called the Eternal Victory, took the center position while the other ships spread out to surround the human convoy. "Human vessels, you are in violation of Council security directives," came the transmission from Korath's ship. "Shut down your engines and prepare to be boarded. Your passengers will be returned to their designated sectors under proper supervision." Price activated her own communications system. "Admiral Korath, this is Captain Amy Price of the Earth Defense Force. These are free citizens of Earth, traveling under the protection of human military vessels. We will not permit you to interfere with their passage." The alien admiral's reply came quickly, filled with the arrogance that Price had learned to expect from Council military officers. "Captain Price, your species has been classified as a security risk. All human vessels will submit to inspection and control. Resistance will be met with appropriate force. Then you'll get all the resistance you can handle, Price replied. And, cut the transmission. She looked around her bridge at the young men and women who served with her. Most of them had never been in real combat before, but they showed no signs of fear. They knew what they were fighting for. All weapon systems online, reported her weapons officer, Chief Petty Officer Mike Chun. Adaptive shielding is ready. Kinetic batteries are loaded with special ammunition, Price nodded. The special ammunition was something the Council had never seen before, designed by human engineers who understood that sometimes the best way to deal with advanced technology was to hit it with something very simple moving very fast. Target their flagship, Price ordered. Show them what humans do when someone threatens our families. The first exchange of fire lit up space between the two fleets. The hegemony ships opened up with their standard energy weapons, confident that their superior firepower would quickly overwhelm the small human force. Bright lances of plasma and laser fire reached out toward the human destroyers, but something unexpected happened. The energy beams struck the human ships and seemed to slide off them like water off glass. The adaptive shielding that human scientists had developed absorbed the energy and redirected it harmlessly into space. Direct hit on the Eternal Victory, reported Chun as the human kinetic rounds struck the alien flagship. Their shields are down by 60%. Price watched in satisfaction as the massive alien dreadnought staggered under the impact of weapons that were essentially very sophisticated bullets fired at incredible speeds. The Council species had spent so much time perfecting energy weapons that they had forgotten the simple effectiveness of kinetic force. But what really shocked the hegemony forces was how the human ships moved. Each destroyer seemed to know exactly what the others were doing, turning and firing in perfect coordination without any visible communication between them. They fought like a single organism with multiple bodies, each part supporting the others. Dr. Marcus Webb watched the battle from his hidden laboratory in the asteroid belt, monitoring the performance of technologies that had been developed in secret over decades. The adaptive shielding was working better than expected, and the kinetic weapons were proving devastatingly effective against alien hulls designed to resist energy attacks. But the most important part of the human advantage was something the aliens could not see or understand. Every human ship was equipped with quantum communication systems that allowed instant coordination across any distance. While the hegemony forces had to rely on traditional signals that could be jammed or delayed, the humans shared information and tactics at the speed of thought. "Captain, 3 of their battleships are moving to flank us," reported Lieutenant Murphy. "They're trying to get behind our formation." "Let them come," Price replied. "Signal the courageous and the intrepid. Execute flanking pattern 7. The 2 other destroyers in her group immediately responded, moving to positions that would put the approaching battleships in a crossfire. The alien commanders, expecting the humans to retreat or panic, suddenly found themselves facing coordinated fire from multiple directions. The battle lasted for 3 hours, and when it was over, 6 hegemony ships were destroyed or disabled while the human convoy escaped safely to the rally point. Captain Price's small flotilla had suffered damage but no losses, proving that human tactics and technology were far more advanced than anyone had suspected. News of the victory spread quickly through both human and alien communication networks. On Council worlds, military commanders who had dismissed humans as primitive fighters suddenly began requesting detailed reports about human capabilities. Species that had been considering rebellion against Council rule started to wonder if the humans might actually succeed in their independence movement. But the most important reaction came from the refugee ships that began fleeing from sectors near human space. Dozens of alien species, terrified by reports of human military prowess, packed their belongings and headed for the safety of the galactic core. For the first time in galactic history, other species were afraid of what humans might do to them. The Great Exodus had become something much more significant than a withdrawal from galactic politics. It had become a demonstration that the Council's control over the galaxy was not as absolute as everyone had believed. Admiral Foster received the battle reports with mixed feelings. The victory was important, but it also meant that there would be no peaceful resolution to Earth's break with the Council. From now on, humanity would have to fight for its freedom, but as he watched the status reports showing thousands of human ships successfully reaching their rally points, Foster allowed himself a moment of pride. His people had shown courage and skill that would be remembered across the galaxy. The universe was about to learn that humans were much more dangerous when they fought for freedom than when they asked for permission. 3 months after the Great Exodus began, President Maria Santos stood in a room that officially did not exist on any galactic map. Behind her, the massive viewscreen showed stars that most alien species had never seen, located in a region of space that Council surveys had marked as empty and worthless. General Chris Taylor checked his tactical display one final time before nodding to the president. "All systems are ready, ma'am. Every human ship in the galaxy will receive the transmission simultaneously." Dr. Patricia Moore adjusted the recording equipment with hands that trembled slightly from excitement rather than fear. As Earth's chief scientist, she had spent decades working on projects that the Council had forbidden or dismissed as impossible. Today, the galaxy would see what humans could really accomplish when they were free to pursue their own ideas. "Begin transmission," Santos ordered, and her image began broadcasting across every communication frequency in known space. The message reached the Galactic Council chambers first, where High Counselor Vextara was meeting with military leaders to discuss the human problem. The alien's 6 eyes widened in shock as Santos appeared on the main display screen, speaking with calm confidence from what appeared to be the bridge of a massive starship. "Citizens of the galaxy," Santos began, "for 200 years, humanity has been part of the galactic community. We followed your rules, accepted your guidance, and tried to prove ourselves worthy of your respect. But we were never honest with you about what we really are. On dozens of worlds, alien beings stopped their daily activities to watch the unprecedented broadcast." In the Council archives, Keeper Thalen felt his crystalline body vibrate with concern as he recognized implications that his fellow Council members had missed. "You believed we were dependent on your technology and your wisdom," Santos continued. "You saw us as a young species that needed protection from our own violent nature. You were wrong about everything." The viewscreen behind Santos changed to show images that sent shockwaves through alien governments across the galaxy. Human colonies that Council intelligence had reported as evacuated and abandoned were revealed to be massive military installations, their surfaces bristling with defensive weapons that dwarfed anything in the Council arsenal. Admiral Kate Johnson stood on the bridge of the EFS Independence, watching her sensor displays as human ships throughout the galaxy powered up systems that had been hidden for decades. The Independence itself was a marvel that proved human engineering capabilities far exceeded what anyone had suspected. The ship stretched for nearly 2 kilometers from bow to stern, its hull incorporating technology from a dozen different sources, but improved with uniquely human innovations. Most impressive of all were the weapon systems that made even Council dreadnoughts look like patrol boats. "Phase 2 initialization complete," reported Commander Bill Watson from his position at the tactical station. "All stealth systems are disengaging on schedule." Around the Independence, space began to shimmer as dozens of other human vessels materialized from apparently empty vacuum. Each ship had been hidden by cloaking technology that was generations ahead of anything the Council possessed, technology that had been developed in secret laboratories while human diplomats pretended to beg for scraps of alien knowledge. The BROADCAST continued with Dr. Moore explaining how human scientists had been reverse engineering Council technology for generations, not to copy it but to understand its limitations and improve upon it. Every piece of alien equipment that humans had been given access to had been studied, analyzed, and eventually surpassed by human ingenuity. "Your energy weapons are based on principles we mastered 50 years ago," Moore said, her voice carrying the quiet confidence of someone who had spent her life pushing the boundaries of what was possible. "Your defensive systems use algorithms that our computers can predict and counter. Your fastest ships move at speeds we consider routine for our cargo vessels. Lieutenant Colonel Steve Parker activated the next phase of the revelation from his intelligence headquarters on Titan, classified. Council communications began appearing on screens across the galaxy, documents that had been stolen by human operatives. Over decades of careful espionage, the files showed systematic suppression of human technological development, assassination attempts against human scientists who had made breakthrough discoveries, and detailed plans to reduce humanity to a client species through biological manipulation and economic control. Most damaging of all were the recordings of council meetings where alien leaders discussed humans like farmers discussing livestock. These documents prove that the council never intended to treat humanity as equals. Parker announced as the files continued to scroll across billions of screens. Every restriction placed on our people, every rejection of our proposals, every condescending lecture about our primitive nature was part of a deliberate plan to keep us weak and dependent. The reaction across the galaxy was immediate and explosive. On the industrial world of Kepler Prime, Governor Alex Murphy watched the human revelations with growing amazement and anger. His people had suffered under council taxation and regulation for centuries, always told that it was for their own good and the good of galactic stability. If the humans could build ships like that in secret, Murphy said to his cabinet, what else has the council been hiding from us? Similar conversations were taking place on hundreds of worlds as species that had never questioned council authority began to see their rulers in a new light. The humans had not just revealed their own capabilities. They had exposed the fundamental dishonesty that lay at the heart of galactic civilization, but the most shocking revelation was yet to come. Santos activated a final display that showed the true scope of human presence in the galaxy. The research stations that aliens had ignored as insignificant were revealed to be major industrial complexes, and mining operations in worthless asteroid fields were shown to be massive shipyards where the human fleet had been constructed in secret. We allowed you to believe we were confined to a few dozen worlds in our home system, Santos said. The truth is that humans have been present in every sector of the galaxy for over a century. We have been watching, learning, and preparing for the day when we would need to stand on our own. The tactical display in the council chambers showed the reality of human expansion with terrifying clarity. Red dots representing human installations appeared throughout the galaxy map, revealing a network of bases and facilities that spanned known space. The humans had not just been hiding their technology. They had been hiding their entire civilization. Admiral Johnson smiled as she watched alien fleet movements on her strategic display. Council military forces were scrambling to respond to threats that had been under their noses for decades, but their reactions showed the same predictable patterns that human strategists had been studying for generations. Begin Phase 3 operations, Johnson ordered. All task forces are authorized to reveal defensive positions and establish security perimeters around allied worlds. Across the galaxy, human ships that had been invisible suddenly appeared in the skies above worlds that had declared independence from council rule. The vessels took up protective formations that made it clear to any potential attackers that these worlds were now under human protection. The psychological impact was devastating to council authority. Species that had been considering rebellion against council rule saw that humans were not just powerful enough to protect themselves, but capable of extending that protection to others. The balance of power in galactic politics had shifted overnight. On the water world of Aquatica, the dolphin-like cetaceans who had been planning an independence movement for decades watched human ships take positions in their outer system. President Sonar Song sent a message to Earth asking for formal alliance and protection, becoming the first non-human species to officially join what would become the Free Worlds Coalition. But perhaps the most important part of the revelation was what it said about human character. Despite having the power to conquer or dominate other species, humans had chosen to hide their strength and work within the system until that system became intolerable. Even now, their message was not one of conquest, but of liberation. We do not seek to rule the galaxy, Santos concluded her broadcast. We seek only the freedom to grow and develop according to our own values. We invite any species that shares our belief in equality and self-determination to join us in building a better future for all sapient beings." The transmission ended, leaving the galaxy in stunned silence as the implications of what had been revealed began to sink in. The humans had not just left the Council. They had exposed the fundamental fraud that Council civilization was built upon. Councillor Vexthara stared at the blank screen with all 6 of his eyes, finally understanding that the Council faced not just a rebellion but the complete collapse of the system that had maintained galactic order for millennia. The age of Council supremacy was over, and the humans had ended it not with conquest but with truth. The human revelation sent shockwaves across the galaxy that grew stronger with each passing day. On the industrial world of Kepler Prime, Governor Alex Murphy stood before his planetary assembly with a document that would change everything for his people. "The evidence is clear," Murphy announced to the packed chamber. "The Council has been lying to us for centuries about our capabilities, our rights, and our future. Today, Kepler Prime declares independence from Council rule and requests protection from the Human Free Worlds Coalition." The assembly erupted in cheers from representatives who had spent their careers fighting Council regulations that seemed designed to keep their world dependent and weak. Within hours, similar declarations were being made on dozens of other worlds as species that had never dared to challenge Council authority found courage in humanity's example. Councillor Vexthara watched the rebellion spread from his command center with growing desperation. The carefully constructed system that had kept the galaxy stable for millennia was collapsing faster than anyone had thought possible. His advisors brought him reports of new independence movements every hour, each one inspired by the human demonstration of successful resistance. "Deploy the pacification fleets," Vexthara ordered his military commanders. "These rebellions must be stopped before they spread further. Use whatever force is necessary to restore order." Fleet Admiral Korath, still smarting from his defeat at the hands of Captain Amy Price, was eager to redeem himself. "The rebels will learn that defying Council authority brings swift punishment," he promised. "Our bioweapons will end their resistance within days." But the Council's response met unexpected resistance from the moment it began. The first target was the mining world of Asteroid Base 7, where the rock-eating silicoids had declared independence and begun fortifying their tunnels against attack. The Council fleet arrived expecting to face primitive defenders armed with mining equipment. Instead, they found human ships waiting in defensive positions around the asteroid field. Captain Sam Brooks led a squadron of human destroyers that had been secretly stationed throughout the sector, ready to protect any species that chose freedom over Council control. "This is Captain Brooks of the Earth Defense Force," came the transmission to the Council fleet. "The silicoids are under human protection. Any attack on this world will be considered an act of war against the Free Worlds Coalition." Admiral Korath's response was predictable and arrogant. "Captain Brooks, you are interfering with legitimate Council authority. Remove your ships immediately or face the consequences." The battle that followed was even more devastating for the Council than the previous encounter. The human ships used tactics that seemed impossible, appearing and disappearing from sensors while delivering devastating attacks on Council vessels. Most disturbing of all was their apparent ability to predict exactly where the alien ships would be at any given moment. Dr. Karen Foster watched the engagement from her research facility on Europa, monitoring the performance of defensive systems that had been developed specifically to counter Council bioweapons. When the alien forces deployed their usual tactic of releasing targeted plagues designed to weaken rebellious populations, they found that their weapons simply stopped working. "The bioweapon neutralization field is functioning perfectly," Foster reported to Admiral Johnson. "The Council's plague vectors are being destroyed before they can reach the planetary surface." The defensive technology was based on research that Foster had conducted in secret for 20 years, studying samples of Council bioweapons that had been captured during previous conflicts. By understanding how the weapons worked, human scientists had developed countermeasures that made such attacks completely ineffective. The psychological impact of the failed Bioweapon attack was enormous. For centuries, the threat of targeted plagues had been the Council's ultimate tool for controlling rebellious populations. Species across the galaxy had submitted to Council authority, rather than face the horror of biological warfare designed specifically for their genetic makeup. Now that ultimate weapon had been proven useless against human protection, the message spread quickly through underground communication networks. If you accepted human alliance, even the Council's most feared weapons could not touch you. Commander Lavra Davis coordinated the next phase of human strategy from her position aboard the trade vessel Prosperity. The ship looked like an ordinary cargo hauler, but it was actually the command center for an operation that would cripple the Council's ability to maintain control over rebellious worlds. All teams report ready, Davis announced over secure channels. Begin shutdown of primary trade routes on my mark. Across the galaxy, human-operated cargo ships simply stopped moving. Trade routes that had carried 40% of all galactic commerce for decades ground to a halt as human crews abandoned their vessels or redirected them to serve the Free Worlds Coalition. Instead of Council worlds, the economic impact was immediate and catastrophic. Food shortages appeared on Council core worlds within days as agricultural products from human-managed farms stopped flowing. Advanced technology components manufactured in human facilities became unavailable, forcing entire industries to shut down production lines. But the most damaging blow to Council authority came from an unexpected source. Dr. Nancy Green had spent her career as a human archaeologist, studying the ruins of ancient civilizations scattered throughout the galaxy. The Council had always controlled access to these sites, claiming that the technology found there was too dangerous for younger species to understand. Green's research had revealed something that the Council had kept hidden for millennia. The ancient ruins belonged to a single civilization that had once spanned the entire galaxy, possessing technology that made current galactic science look primitive by comparison. The Council had been systematically suppressing this technology to maintain their monopoly on galactic politics. These ruins contained the plans for faster-than-light communication across unlimited distances, Green announced in a broadcast that reached every world in the galaxy. The technology for creating matter from energy, for healing any disease, for traveling between galaxies. The Council has kept this knowledge locked away while billions of beings suffered from problems that could have been solved centuries ago. The revelation that followed Green's announcement was accompanied by the release of thousands of archaeological reports that the Council had classified as top secret. Images of incredible alien cities, devices that seemed to work like magic, and scientific principles that could revolutionize galactic civilization filled screens across hundreds of worlds. Most shocking of all was the discovery that the ancient civilization had fallen not to war or disaster, but to the same kind of controlling authority that the Council now represented. The ruins contained warnings about the dangers of allowing any single group to control the development of others, messages that seemed to speak directly to the current galactic situation. Species that had supported Council rule for millennia began to question everything they had been told. The Altarians, beings of pure energy who had been among the Council's most loyal supporters, sent a delegation to meet with human representatives. The Crystalline Methodists, who had served as the Council's record keepers for centuries, began releasing classified documents that supported human claims about Council deception. Even more damaging was the response from species that humans had never contacted directly. The deep space dwellers known as the Void Swimmers emerged from their hidden colonies to announce support for human independence. The machine intelligence called the Network, which had remained neutral in galactic politics for centuries, began broadcasting messages encouraging all sapient beings to seek freedom from those who would limit your potential. President Santos received reports of the spreading rebellion from her command center with mixed feelings of pride and concern. The human strategy was working better than anyone had hoped, but the success also meant that the galaxy was heading toward a conflict that could destroy civilizations. The Council won't give up their power without a fight, General Taylor warned during a strategy meeting. Vexstar is already mobilizing their reserve fleets. This could turn into the largest War in Galactic History. Santos nodded grimly. Then we make sure it's also the last war fought over the right of beings to govern themselves. Signal all coalition forces to prepare for final operations. If the Council wants a war, we'll give them one they'll never forget. But even as military preparations continued, something more important was happening throughout the galaxy. Species that had never communicated directly were beginning to work together, sharing technology and resources without Council oversight. The rigid hierarchy that had defined galactic civilization for millennia was being replaced by something new and unprecedented. The age of enforced order was ending, and the age of chosen cooperation was beginning. The humans had not just started a rebellion. They had sparked a transformation that would reshape the galaxy forever. 1 year after Earth's dramatic withdrawal from the Galactic Council, President Maria Santos stood on the observation deck of New Geneva Station, watching alien children play alongside human ones in the community gardens below. The massive diplomatic complex floated in neutral space, its gleaming hull a symbol of the new order that had emerged from the chaos of galactic revolution. The station itself was a marvel of cooperative engineering, built using technology from dozens of different species, working together for the first time in galactic history. Silicoid rock shapers had carved the basic structure, aquatic engineers had designed the life support systems, and human architects had coordinated the entire project into something that served the needs of every member species. Ambassador Lisa Carter, who had started the entire revolution with her dramatic resignation from the Council, now served as Earth's representative to the Free Worlds Coalition. She walked through the station's corridors with a sense of amazement at how much had changed in such a short time. "The final vote count is in," Carter reported to Santos as they met in the Central Assembly Hall. 57 species have ratified the Charter of Free Worlds, with 12 more expected to join within the next month. Santos nodded with satisfaction. The Charter was humanity's greatest diplomatic achievement, a document that guaranteed the rights of all sapient beings without the paternalistic oversight that had characterized Council rule. Every species that signed it agreed to treat others as equals, to share knowledge freely, and to resolve disputes through negotiation rather than force. Admiral Kate Johnson commanded the Coalition Defense Fleet from her flagship, the EFS Liberty, a vessel that incorporated the best technology from dozens of member species. The ship's hull was shaped by silicoid engineering, its engines used Altairian energy manipulation, and its computers ran on hybrid systems that combined human creativity with methodic precision. "All patrol routes are secure," Johnson reported during the daily fleet briefing. "The Council has made no aggressive moves toward Coalition space in the past 30 days. Their remaining fleets seem to be focused on maintaining control of their core systems." The transformation of galactic politics had been faster and more complete than anyone had expected. The Galactic Council still existed, but it controlled less than a third of its former territory. High Counselor Vexthara had been replaced by a more moderate leadership that spoke of reconciliation and reform, but the damage to Council authority was irreversible. Dr. Patricia Moore led the Coalition Science Directorate from her research facility on the ancient world of Kepler-7, where ruins from the lost civilization had yielded incredible technological breakthroughs. Working alongside alien scientists in ways that had been impossible under Council rule, her teams made discoveries that benefited all member species. The faster-than-light communication network is now operational across Coalition space, Moore announced during a joint research conference. Every member world can now communicate instantly with every other member world, regardless of distance. The breakthrough had been made possible by combining human engineering with ancient, alien technology and insights from species that had never been allowed to contribute to galactic science under Council rule. The Void Swimmers provided knowledge of space-time manipulation, the network offered computational resources beyond imagination, and the deep ocean dwellers of Aquatica contributed understanding of quantum mechanics that had taken them millennia to develop. But the most important changes were not technological or political but social. Captain Amy Price, now serving as Earth's military liaison to the Coalition, watched alien and human officers training together at the new academy on Luna Base. The old barriers between species were dissolving as beings who had been kept separate by Council policy learned to work together as equals. The joint training exercises are exceeding all expectations, Price reported to her superiors. Silicoid engineers working with human tacticians have developed defensive strategies that are 30% more effective than either species could achieve alone. The success of interspecies cooperation had surprised even the humans who had made it possible. Species that the Council had claimed were incompatible were finding ways to combine their strengths and compensate for each other's weaknesses. The rigid hierarchy that had defined galactic civilization was being replaced by flexible networks of mutual support. Governor Alex Murphy of Kepler Prime had become one of the Coalition's most effective administrators, organizing the transition of former Council worlds to the new system of government. His success had inspired other planetary leaders to embrace the changes rather than resist them. The economic integration is proceeding ahead of schedule, Murphy reported during a Coalition Assembly meeting. Trade between member worlds has increased by 400% since the formation of our alliance. The economic boom was the result of removing the artificial barriers that the Council had maintained to keep species dependent on their authority. When beings were free to trade directly with each other and share technology without restriction, prosperity followed naturally. Dr. Nancy Green continued her archaeological work with support from the Coalition government, uncovering more secrets of the ancient civilization that had once spanned the galaxy. Her discoveries provided not just technological advances, but historical lessons about the dangers of concentrated power. The ancient records are clear, Green explained to a gathering of Coalition leaders. The civilization that built these ruins fell because they allowed a small group of individuals to control the development of others. They left these warnings specifically to prevent future civilizations from making the same mistakes. The warnings had particular relevance for the Coalition itself, which was careful to avoid creating the same kind of centralized authority that had corrupted the Galactic Council. Power was distributed among member species, with no single group able to dominate the others. Lieutenant Colonel Steve Parker had transitioned from intelligence work to historical research, documenting the rise and fall of Council authority for future generations to study. His archives contained thousands of hours of recordings showing how the old system had gradually corrupted even well-meaning leaders. The Council didn't start out evil, Parker observed during a university lecture. On New Geneva Station, they began with good intentions, wanting to maintain peace and stability in the galaxy. But absolute power corrupts absolutely, and over time they became the very thing they had originally opposed. The lesson was not lost on Coalition leaders, who built safeguards into their government structure to prevent any individual or species from accumulating too much authority. Regular elections, term limits, and checks and balances ensured that power remained distributed and accountable, but perhaps the most important change was visible in the station's community areas, where Santos watched children from a dozen different species play together without the prejudices their parents had been taught. A young human boy was building something with blocks alongside a silicoid child whose silicon-based body sparkled in the artificial sunlight. Nearby, an aquatic child floated in a specially designed pool while communicating with friends through a translation device that made their different languages irrelevant. "This is what we were really fighting for," Carter observed as she joined Santos at the observation window. "Not just political freedom, but the right to grow up in a galaxy where your species doesn't determine your opportunities." Santos nodded, remembering her own childhood on Earth when humans had been told they were too young and too dangerous to be trusted with real responsibility. Now human children grew up knowing they were equals among the stars, free to pursue whatever dreams their talents and ambitions could support. The transformation was not complete, and there were still challenges to face. Some species remained loyal to the old council system, and there were occasional conflicts over resources and territory. But the fundamental change in galactic civilization was irreversible. Admiral Johnson received her final report of the day with satisfaction. All coalition worlds report peaceful conditions. No military incidents, no political unrest, no requests for intervention. It was a state of affairs that would have been impossible under the old system, where council forces were constantly deployed to suppress rebellions and maintain order through force. The coalition maintained peace not through military might but through genuine cooperation and mutual benefit. As Santos prepared to return to her quarters for the night, she reflected on the irony of the situation. By trying to keep humanity contained and controlled, the Galactic Council had created the very force that would ultimately destroy their monopoly on galactic civilization. The primitive species from Sol 3 had not conquered the galaxy through military force or technological superiority. Instead, they had shown other species that there was a better way to live among the stars. Based on equality, cooperation, and mutual respect, the universe was no longer in panic. For the first time in millennia, the galaxy was truly free, and humanity had shown the way to a future where all sapient beings could reach their full potential among the infinite stars.